All right, welcome everyone to the next in our series of our Parent Empowerment Conference. Tonight, we're welcoming Dr. Amanda Schwartz. Amanda has supported families of young children with disabilities as a teacher, a consultant, a researcher, and a training for over 25 years. Her work focuses on supporting children with disabilities to access high quality services from education, health, and community organizations. As an advocate for individuals with disabilities, family engagement and inclusion are central to her work. She has authored training and materials for early intervention, preschool special education, Head Start, childcare, family childcare, and home visitor. And her work focuses on building strong relationships between families and professionals in order to promote information sharing, planning, and problem solving. So, Amanda, I welcome you and thank you, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here with you guys tonight and talking about a fun topic, mathematics, right? We forget how much fun and playful math can be. And so this session is called Engaging in Math Learning in Everyday Ways, how to support your child's early math development. And the goal is really to help you think about the science behind math and how it helps your child develop and grow, as well as some of the ways that you can integrate it into your life and know what your child is learning, and then communicate with the professionals who work with you to make sure that they're growing. So this is me. I come from this very naturally. I am the mother of two, as you can see. They are now much bigger than that. They are now 11 and almost 14. And we have been through lots of fun math games throughout the years. My son, who's in geometry and about to start Algebra 2, is beyond my math capacity. So we have to get a little more creative and inventive in how to engage in math conversations at this stage. But when they were little, we had a lot of fun with math. And you see there, I also live with and care for my mother, who was a pediatrician and loved math. And so I grew up in a house where math was part of every day. So I come by it naturally, and we share that with our kids. So this is today's agenda. We did the brief introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about the brain and math development. We're going to talk a little bit about what you can expect from math development for your child. Then we'll get into some of the ways that you can integrate math in your everyday life, how to know what your child knows and can do, and then how to talk with professionals about math development. So let's keep going. Who is in the Zoom room? I'm not quite sure how many of us there are, so I'm going to try to peek and see. I think we're just a small group today. So I'll do this activity and you can do it at home if you're watching the recording. My name is Amanda Schwartz. I like to play basketball with my son. He's been a huge basketball fan since he was little. When he was a toddler, he had one of those play hoops, and so he would constantly be shooting hoops. My daughter was born a dancer, and so for her, I put a disco ball. We love to dance and play in our house. It's one of the great joys. We blast music from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and we dance until we can't dance anymore. So think about your child and what different games you like to play with them. I will tell you that basketball has a lot of great math ties. Keeping score is a good one. How tall the hoop is, how high I can shoot, how high I can jump. All of these kinds of things are math activities. Dancing can have lots of math activities too. There is rhythm and pattern in music, and there's rhythm and pattern in dance. And so counting steps and thinking about the patterns of steps is a great way to do math with your child while dancing. So I'm sure that you'll find that the toys that you play with engage math activities too. You just have to think creatively about it. All right. So as I'm starting to do this introduction, I want you to think about why you joined today's session. What is it that you want to take away about math learning that you think will inform the way that you parent your child and how you engage in their development? So just take a minute, think about that, and then I will proceed. Okay, so now that you know why you're here and have your set purpose in mind, let's keep going and see if we can give you the information that you need to be able to meet your goal. I want to start off with the importance of the brain and math development. The activities that you do with your young child help them form important connections in their brain. And so I'm going to take a minute and we're going to go through 3 big ideas about how math supports brain development, how it encourages your brain to grow new connections that are useful and more efficient. So this is what the developing brain looks like from the time a child is born until the time they are 60 months or 5 years old. They're born with a lifetime supply of neurons. Those are the pieces that connect through synapses later on. But there are numerous neurons in the brain. They haven't made those connections yet. But if you look, by the time a child is 3 years old, they have a full head of connections. The synapses are the map of the brain. Essentially, it's when 2 neurons connect, they're creating a pathway for information to flow within the brain. And so by the time a child is 3, you'll see that 36 months, they are pretty well formed in how they understand the world, how they've taken in that information. We're going to talk about what happens next, but what you'll see is what the brain starts getting more efficient over time. These synapses continue to grow over the next 2 years, and then they start pruning. They start becoming more fine-tuned, more efficient in how they're used. So let's talk about that. So math strengthens the brain. It creates connections between these neurons. I'm going to show you the video so you can see what it looks like when these neurons connect. And when we do math with them, these connections are happening. So let's watch the video and see what it looks like when the neuron connects.
What you're looking at here are 2 neurons under the microscope that I've filmed. And if you wait really patiently, you'll be able to see them connecting to one another.
It's pretty cool. So imagine that you are counting and you are saying 1 as you touch something.
What you're looking at here are 2 neurons under the microscope.
Those, as you're saying the word 1 and touching something with your child, they're making that connection so that these 2 neurons now have a pathway that says, when I touch an object, I can say 1. It's an important piece of the process. Then what they found is that math is a mental workout. So every time you do math with your child, you're helping their brain develop all of those neural connections, and you're making those connections stronger and more impactful. So you touch something and say 1, you touch the next thing, you say 2, you touch the next thing, you say 3, and that pathway, that neural pathway, keeps making those connections stronger and stronger and stronger so that the brain really makes those connections and remembers those connections for later use. Then this video, which I'm going to take a minute to show you, talks about how your brain becomes more efficient. So you remember I said that those neural pathways grow until the child is about 3, and then they start doing some pruning. So let's watch the video, and it's going to talk to you a little bit about why the pruning is important, why breaking up those pathways and reconnecting or strengthening the pathways that are more used is important. So hold on one second, and here we go.
When you are a baby, you have a lot of these synapses. In fact, you have too many. As you develop into adulthood, your brain has to prune away the weaker synapses in order to function efficiently. This is what we call synaptic pruning.
Now, let's imagine your brain as a densely populated city with billions of buildings, each one connected to every other with its own separate road. This city looks like your brain when you were a baby. Too many connections. In fact, this is what scientists call hyperconnectivity, and it is one chaotic place. This city needs some pruning.
But how do we know which synapses to get rid of and which to keep?
Imagine you're driving to school, trying to navigate these tiny separate roads. It would be difficult at first, but eventually you'd find the fastest route and take that path each day. Your friends see how fast you're getting to school and decide to follow you. Soon, all the kids in the neighborhood are taking the same road, and there's too much traffic. The city needs to widen and strengthen this road to move all the traffic along efficiently.
The brain does the same thing with synapses between neurons that are sending lots of messages back and forth. The more the pathway is used, the stronger the connection.
And what happens to all those tiny streets you no longer use to get to school? We don't need them anymore, so let's remove that asphalt. This is when synaptic pruning comes into play. Your brain adapts, removing the connections it isn't using anymore.
As the cells in your eyes send more and more messages to the visual processing center of your brain, those connections are strengthened. Meanwhile, the connections from your eyes to the auditory center of the brain are pruned away. So information from your eyes is processed only visually.
A big part of efficient synaptic pruning is keeping the proper balance. If not enough pruning occurs, the brain stays hyperconnected, as it was when you were a baby. This hyperconnectivity has been observed in some cases of autism.
So, yep, I'll let this play.
Which could be related to the feeling of being overwhelmed when processing chaotic environments.
So I'm going to stop there. So there is an intentional way that we stimulate our children and that we provide them with opportunities to practice what they know. So for example, you're going to do that 1 touch, 2 touch, 3 touch over and over and over again to make that pathway really strong, rather than always counting everything and or saying numbers all over the place, because that is going to be very overwhelming to a child. If you have a child with a disability like autism, being really careful and intentional about how you are providing them information so that you're not overwhelming them, so that you're offering them consistent information that they can understand and process cleanly, will help them greatly in developing synaptic connections that are meaningful and efficient. And so, as you can see, there's a lot of connection between the way your brain grows and the way you feed it to be strong. So these math activities that we do really help make those connections, make those relationships very important in the brain so that the neural pathways are there. One of the pieces of research that they do at the Center on the Developing Child is around executive functioning. And they found that math is a great way to build executive functioning skills. These are skills that help children function in classrooms, function in society. They help them develop healthy habits and reduce stress, because the executive functioning skills are what help us regulate ourselves, quiet our brain, and learn how to function in our society. So I'm going to show you one more video, and this one is a great way to help you understand how math and the patterns of math can help build those executive functioning skills that are so important to development and children's success. So here we go.
And social skills, an important group of skills which scientists call executive function and self-regulation, can be thought of like air traffic control in the child's mental airspace. Think of a young child's brain as the control tower at a busy airport, all those planes landing and taking off, and all of the support systems on the ground simultaneously demand the controller's attention to avoid a crash. It's the same with a young child learning to pay attention, plan ahead, and remember and follow lots of rules. Like all of us, kids have to react to things happening in the world around them, while also dealing with worries, temptations, and obligations on their mind. As these demands for attention pile up, air traffic control helps a child regulate the flow of information, prioritize tasks, and above all, find ways to manage stress and avoid mental collisions along the way. Having this ability is a necessity for positive and level mental health. Developing effective air traffic control, overcoming toxic stress, and building solid brain architecture.
So that is essentially an important skill that a child will need to function in school, right? They need to be able to take in information, remember it, and use it later. They need to be able to be mentally flexible so that they can shift from a group activity to a independent activity. They have to transition between things all throughout the day. And so it's our job to start building those skills, those problem solving, self-regulation, and memory skills that they'll need to be successful in school. And math is one of those areas that really does it for kids because it is logical, it is structured, it is formulaic, and it is repetitive. And so it teaches kids how to use their brains in ways that will help them be incredibly successful in school. So I want you to do a little activity for me. I want you to think about what you would put next in this pattern. You can put it in the chat, or you can come off mute and you can tell me what comes next. What do you see? What would come next? Somebody be brave. Any thoughts? What would come next? Triangle, triangle, circle, green, triangle, circle, green, what would it be? Green, triangle, circle. It could be a circle. It could be green, triangle, circle, circle. Should I reveal it? I'm going to reveal it. Oh, let's see. I got to get my mouse in the right spot. Oh, I fooled you. Green, triangle, circle. Okay, so let's think about this. What did you need to solve this first problem? Did you need to have memory so that you knew what the pattern was? Did you have to have mental flexibility, the ability to adjust what you thought it might be? How about self-control? Did you have to sort of direct your attention and focus on it so that you could figure out the next step? So if you don't mind popping into the chat what you think, what skills you think you used, that would be great. This one doesn't have a right answer. What do you think you used? Working memory, remember, is holding an idea in your head so that you can use it. Mental flexibility is that ability to, yes. Mental flexibility here, yes. You needed to be able to adjust and follow the flow of the pattern. I think you needed a little working memory too, because working memory is how you remember what came first, what came second, and what came third. And then self-control you always need because it's what helps you direct your attention to the task at hand. Let's try it again. Sorry. Let's try it again. So what do you think this pattern is going to look like? Green, triangle, blue circle, green, triangle, red circle. What would you put next, given my trick here? What do you think the next pattern, the next shape would be? I'm watching for the chat to see if anybody's got it. What do you think? Is it a green triangle, a blue circle, or a red circle? Green triangle, green triangle. All right, great. How did you guess it? Did you use your working memory, mental flexibility, or self-control? What do you think? Or all three? What do you think? All three. I think so too. I think that I created a new problem for you. And so you had to focus on what the problem was. You had to think about it in a different way than you had thought about it before. And you had to remember the pattern. So let's look at one more. Okay, what comes next? What do you think? Green triangle. Anybody else agree? I think we all agree. It is a green triangle and then a red circle. And once again, you are problem solving. So you are using all these different executive functioning skills, and you are fiddling with those mental pathways so that they understand patterns shift and change, but that the shapes stay the same. So there are triangles and circles. The colors stay the same. There's green, blue, and red. It's how you use them that's different. And so all of these skills are really important. And by doing activities like this, you're pushing your child's brain to see things in different ways and build new pathways. So oops, I'm sorry, I don't know why that happened. So what should your child know and be able to do? Let's see. So some of the basic math skills that we expect for young children is numeracy, and that is the idea that their numbers have meaning, and that quantity is measured by a number. Representation is this notion that we can represent ideas and concepts with mathematical concepts, mathematical ideas. So you can have 5 goldfish in a bowl, you can take 2 out, and there will be 3 left. That's representation. Spatial sense is this notion of measurement broadly, of space and how 3 dimensions versus 2 dimensions. And the way that a flat triangle becomes a pyramid. Building and sculpting and things like that can really help build spatial sense. Measurement is big, small, heavy, light, those kinds of concepts. Estimation is when we force them not to count, where we force them to look with their eyes and make a guess, and hope using various strategies that it is fairly accurate. So it's when you were a kid and you went to the store and they had how many jelly beans are in the jar kind of activity. Those are great activities to do with young kids. The younger they are, the fewer the activities. So you may want to put, there are those plastic pretzel containers at the store that you can buy, where they're see-through plastic jars. You can put tennis balls or ping pong balls inside, and you can have your child guess how many ping pong balls or tennis balls are inside. It works on not just estimation, but also spatial sense and numeracy. So estimation is kind of cool because it brings together a bunch of those concepts. Of course, patterns are part of basic math skills, understanding, like the activity we just did, that there are patterns in our world and that those patterns are useful in helping us predict things. And then problem solving is pulling all these concepts together so that you can present a child with a problem and they can use some of these other skills to begin to solve those problems and understand how to address a problem in a logical, reasonable way, using a formula, using some basic math skills that will help them solve that problem. One of the problems I used to love to do, which is based on Piaget, Jean Piaget, who's a child development theorist, is I used to love to take different containers, different size glasses, and pour a cup of water in each of the glasses. The younger a child is, the more likely they are to think that the different shape of the glass means that there's a different amount of water in each. And it's a fun activity if you have a bunch of different jars and glasses to have them measure and see that it is the same amount of liquid, no matter what the container might be. And it's a wonderful problem-solving activity to do with them. It's called conservation. So it is an important skill for them to have. So one of the tools that we have to use to understand what our expectations should be for children is this early outcomes framework. And I'm going to show it to you on the screen. And then I am going to put the link for it in the chat so that you can go to it later. This was developed by the Office of Head Start in coordination with the Office of Child Care and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And this is what we nationally think of as the critical knowledge and information that the birth to 5 population should know. As you see, all of the different domains are in it. And if you come to my language and literacy session next week, we'll explore language and communication a little bit. But in cognition, you'll find math standards. And so we can look directly at what we should expect an infant toddler to know. And we can see it in a progression, right? So this basic idea is the child develops sense of number and quantity. And it tells you at each phase what you should expect for that child to be able to do. And by the end of 36 months or 3 years, what you should be able to see your child do. This is what many early childhood programs are using to measure where children are in their development. But these are the expectations nationally that are being used. We in Maryland have early learning standards that are similar to this. I like this tool better for parents because I think it's a little more engaging, a little easier to understand, and helps you understand in a very practical way what kinds of things that your child will be able to do. Know that, and here is preschool is much more math heavy. And so there are 4 subdomains, and within each subdomain, there are specific expectations. Know that development is not a straight path. So if your child isn't doing some of the things that you see that they mark as age appropriate, it is a continuum of growth, and all development happens in a kind of different way for every child. I think it's really important for you to know as you walk away that some kids follow a smooth pathway in certain areas. Some kids do not. They may grow a little and then plateau, grow a little and plateau. They may grow a little and then come back a little bit. In our new COVID world, children are really all over the place developmentally, and it's hard to predict where they're going to be. So we just use these milestones as a way to have a sense of what kinds of things we can be working on with kids. And that helps us predict and plan what our next steps should be and how we can support development. So that I would say use them in that same way. If your child is 3, but doing things that a 2-year-old or a 1.5-year-old might be doing, it's just it just gives you information on what you may want to do to move them forward in different areas. Okay. Are there any questions about any of that information? Okay. So let's practice this a little bit. Here is my little sweetie. I always use pictures of my kids because I have permission to use them. So this is my little sweetie when she was an infant. And you can see she is surrounded by math in this wonderful seating toy that she has. When I went to the standards and looked at where she was, I saw that she was using matching and sorting objects to understand similar and different characteristics. So she was exploring the difference between familiar and unfamiliar objects in this particular toy. And she was exploring them orally most of the time, but with her hands as well. But what it did was it gave her the foundations particularly when I added language and other experiences alongside it to allow her to have the foundations of knowing what a two-dimensional object was versus a three-dimensional object, what a circle is, what a square is, what a triangle is, various colors, heavy and light, those kinds of things were all surrounding her. And so she was engaged in those kinds of play all the time. Here are my two sweeties again. This time they're playing with a water table outside. And the thing I think was most useful here was that they were developing a sense of number and quantity. So they played out there and they would say things like, this is full, it's heavy, it's a lot, it's not enough, I need to fill it up more. I can't splash with it because it's empty. So all of these words connect with this developmental idea of talking about amount and using words or signs to identify what those amounts were. All right, here we are building a fort out of our couch in the living room. This was another opportunity for them to work on some math skills. In this particular instance, they're working on their spatial awareness and their understanding of objects and movement in space. So by setting up these spaces in the fort and then snuggling in and using them, they were beginning to understand how structures can be built, how things fit inside each other, how they align next to each other. But just these basic things that we do in our everyday lives that are fun and playful allow them to get some really clear math concepts that support them in their readiness for school and support them for their cognitive development in life. All right, this is the other thing that they were doing when they were building this fort. They were beginning to use words like put it up, slide it next to, push it over, it's falling down, stand up and see if you can stand, you'll be too tall for the roof. All of these things are about positions of objects in space, and they're things that we do all the time in our lives, but they help them with these big concepts. All right, here's another one. Being able to identify, describe, compare, and compose shapes. If you have colored pieces of papers that you can cut into shapes, these were little blocks. I have the good fortune of being a former teacher. And so I have all sorts of things in my house that are relics of my teaching experiences. But in this experience of just dumping the shapes on the floor and letting them play with them, My son, who was a preschooler at the time, was able to label the shapes, label the colors, use them to create new shapes and colors, and compare them. This is bigger, this is smaller, and create art out of them. So you don't have to have blocks to do this. You can use cut up pieces of paper. You can do mosaics and things like that. All of this is possible, but it all builds toward the same skills, and it's fun. That's the most important part of all of this, is that it should be fun for you and your children. It should feel like play. So let's talk about how you do this in your everyday life. We're going to talk about the places in your home where you can use math. We're going to talk about the routines in your day and how you can use those routines to integrate math ideas. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you can use your neighborhood to make sure that you are showing your children that math is everywhere. So first, here is a pretty dollhouse, but I chose it because it has a variety of rooms that you may have in your apartment or your house where you can talk about math. The first place I like to talk about math is the kitchen. My family, we like to cook together. I don't know if you like to cook together, but cooking is one of the greatest ways to practice math. And you can start when they're just toddling around your kitchen. We used to have a cabinet that was the kid cabinet. I put a lot of different cans in there, and I put bottles of spices and things like that. And my children would open the door of the cabinet and they would bring out cans, and we would say heavy, and they would bring out a little spice jar, and I would say light. So using those experiences as they were going through the cabinet to give them the language, the math language and the math vocabulary to understand these concepts was starting to build those neural pathways. They used to stack the cans and see how tall they could stack the cans before they fell. When we would cook together, we'd open up the cans, we'd measure them. Measurement is, of course, an important math skills. We cooked together still. We cooked together intensely when they were preschoolers. And then we cooked together again intensely when they were in third grade and learning fractions, because as your child grows, the skills become more complex as you practice them in your home. And so there's math opportunities like crazy in the kitchen. In the dining room, when you're sitting down to dinner at the table or having breakfast in the morning, those are great times for family conversations. And one of the things that we used to do in our family that I know works really well is to play math games while you're having dinner. Those can be word problems, they can be, and for preschoolers and little children, infant and preschoolers and toddlers, it can simply be, if I have a red bottle, what do you have? And they look at the bottle or jar in front of them or the food in front of them, and they label the colors or the shapes. As they start getting to be 3, 4, and 5, you start saying, I have 2 sausages and 1 egg. I have, how many things do I have all together? And you can say, I have 1, 2, 3. So it's just a fun way to get them engaged in conversations about math as they're eating their meals, and keep them entertained. Sometimes dinner time can be challenging. And so if you have some sort of conversations that engage them and keep them playful, it's a great opportunity for them to practice those skills. The bathroom is another great place to do math. You wouldn't think it is, but it is. Bath time is filled with opportunities for playing with water in different cups. You can there are these little dies that you can put in the tub. Make sure that they're appropriate for your child's skin, because sometimes they have chemicals in them that you don't want to use. You can use food coloring too. It does not stain your skin, just a couple drops, but you can color the water. You can measure the water. You can put a little water in and have them say more and learn the concept of more. They can splash and play in the sink. As you move from a smear of toothpaste to a pea of toothpaste, you can talk about the different sizes in the toothpaste that they're receiving on their toothbrush. You can have them look at the different size of towels in your bathroom. There's just a lot of different ways to do math in the bath. And then in your living room, you'll have games and toys you can play with. If you have a gorgeous living room like the one in this dollhouse with wallpaper on the walls, you can look at the patterns in the wallpaper. You can look at the patterns in the bookcase or the patterns on the furniture. Steps are patterns, by the way. You can use steps as a way to teach patterns. And then in the bedroom, there are children's toys, of course, but bedtime is a great way to practice counting sheep, right? Or to practice making patterns or identifying shapes. So those are great opportunities just within your house. Be creative and have fun with it. Any questions? Okay. So you have daily routines in your life, and those daily routines come filled with math opportunities. First of all, the fact that you have a routine means that you're on a schedule. That means you can point to the idea of time. Now, birth to 5, time is a very difficult concept, but you can start talking about it. You can say, give your children 5-minute warnings or 2-minute warnings. You can use sand timers to help them transition. And so build the concept of the measurement of time with them in that way. You can show them clocks so that they understand that when the hand is on the 3, because the big hand moves and the little hand moves, but when the big hand is on the 3, it's time for us to have a snack. Or when the big hand is on the 6, or sorry, the little hand is on the 6, it's time for dinner. Those kinds of routines allow them to see that the day is measured and that you have expectations for them within the day. If you have trouble getting out the door, which we always did, we used music as a way to measure time. So I knew that a song was 3 minutes long. And so I would say it's a 3-minute song. You have 3 minutes to get ready. And we used the same song every time. So they knew when the song was starting, when the song was in the middle, and when the song was coming to an end, so that they knew how much time they had before they had to stop playing with their toy and get ready to put on their shoes. These kinds of tricks are used in the classroom all the time, and they're easy to use. If you've got a cell phone, you may have a song that you listen to over and over and over again with your children, and so they know it really well, and you can use that to help them transition from routine to routine. You can also talk about, as you're putting on shoes, you can talk about the pattern of getting dressed in the morning or getting ready to leave for the day. First we put on our shoes, then we put on our jacket, then we put on our bag, and then we walk out the door. That is a routine and a practice pattern, and it is the same thing every single time you walk out the door, right? Shoes, jacket, bag, walk out. And as soon as they know the rhythm of that pattern, those routines become much easier for them. You can even give them pictures to go with the routine so that they start navigating themselves. All right, so how can you use math with your child when you're playing? I love blocks. I think all blocks offer great opportunities for math learning. They're good for everything, but math in particular. They're all different shapes and sizes. They're all different weights. You can have wooden blocks, colored wooden blocks like this. You can have plain wooden blocks. You can have Legos or Duplos. You can have foam blocks. There are so many different kinds of blocks. If you don't want to buy blocks, you don't have to. There are cardboard boxes that you can, empty cardboard boxes that you can get pretty much anywhere. You can use cans. You can use cereal boxes. You can use soap boxes. But what they do when they play with blocks is they learn how shapes work together. They learn how to measure tall, short, wide, thin, heavy, light. They start using language like next to, in front of, above, under. All of this stuff happens within the context of building a road. This one looks like a train. And being creative in putting together something that they just want to explore and play with. The shape blocks that we saw earlier, which could be cardboard, just plain old pieces of paper or cardboard pieces of paper, are another way to explore shapes and colors and creating new things, new shapes out of other shapes. So it's an awesome way to allow children to explore and play, but also to begin scaffolding that math language and those math concepts that will help them later on. Pretending is one of my favorite math activities. People don't think of pretending as a math activity, but it really is. If you can see this little girl, she's having tea with her doll. Tea is filled with math. She may be making tea in a teapot. And so is the teapot full or is it empty? If you pour it out, are you pouring out half? Are you pouring out the whole thing? Do you have a cup or 2 cups? How many snacks are at the table? Do you need more snacks? If you have 3 snacks and I give you 1 more, how many snacks do you have? Thinking creatively during these pretending moments is a great way to encourage them to use those math ideas. And you're following your child's lead, which means that you're supporting them in a way that feels really comfortable and safe to them. You're also applying new information to skills that are practiced and preferred by your child. So always use that math language when you're practicing, when you're playing pretend. And I have to confess that towards the end, they wanted me to be a certain Lego character and say certain things. And that was challenging because I was tired, but I could easily flip into, let me build a wall for you and see what kind of patterns I can create. And that was an easy way for me to engage with my children and still support them in learning a variety of things. So just keep at it. And then there's games, of course. Games are great for math. I have dominoes here, but there's Go Fish, there's Memory, there's a ton of other games. You're matching numbers here. You can add numbers. You can make dominoes with different concepts like shapes and colors. And teaching them these skills also gets them ready to start thinking about rules. By the time they're 4 and 5, they're really engaged in thinking about games with rules and fairness. And those are logical concepts too, with formulas. So these mathematical concepts fit in really well particularly if you're playing games. I know that if I have 7 dominoes to start and I get rid of all of my dominoes, I will win the game. So it gives them a structure and a frame. Later on, that skill can transfer into a social situation where if they're playing with a friend and they have a specific rule or expectation, they know consistently that they can use that rule or expectation with that friend, and that that can support them in that relationship. And then math is all over your neighborhood. We used to play I Spy like crazy. I spy 4 windows on a house. Well, this one's tough because all of the houses, many of the houses have 4 windows. I spy a circle, and it's the tire. I spy something red. It's a brick. These kinds of games are great. Going to the playground is great. Let me see if I have that picture. This playground is filled with opportunities for math exploration. Are you swinging high? Are you swinging low? Is the structure tall? Is it short? How many steps do you have to climb to get to the top? How long will it take you to slide down? How many stones can you find by the pond? All of these things are great math concepts, and they're part of play. You can do scavenger hunts in a playground or in a neighborhood, and that's a great way to find some math ideas. So math is pretty much everywhere you look. It's just a matter of being creative and how and intentional and how you engage your child in it. So I see the comments. I love the idea that I introduced a new idea of steps as patterns. Up, down, or up, step up, put your other foot up. Step up, put your other foot up. And you know, walking is actually a pattern, right, left, right, left, right, left. If you skip, it complicates the pattern. It's hop, I think it's hop, hop, step, hop, hop, step. So thinking about the way we move and making that into math can be really great. Math in the community, grocery stores, convenience stores, the haircut place, restaurants, anywhere you can go, you can find math. I have to admit, I let my children pay for different things at 7-Eleven, at restaurants when they were 3, 4, and 5, because I wanted them to see that if you hand money to somebody for something, they take that money and give you a thing, which is an economic concept, and then that they also get change. So if the thing was 50 cents and they gave the person $1, they would get 50 cents back. They didn't understand that they got 50 cents back. They just knew that they got something different back, less than what they had, and that they got something for it. So these kinds of basic things can be great. In the grocery store, you can count the number of apples you're getting. You can give your child at the age of 3, 4, 5 the grocery list. They are not probably going to be able to read it. If you put pictures on it, they will. And sometimes if I had the energy, I would do that. But they start taking ownership about that experience of being in the grocery store and start engaging with conversations of, Mommy, the watermelon it sounds hollow when I pat it. It feels very heavy. It's really large. We should pick this one. And I think that gives them some basic concepts of how math is part of our everyday life and how we use math for very basic things like going to the grocery store, going to the playground, making dinner, all sorts of things that you do in your everyday life. So now that you know how to integrate it into your life, how do you know what your child knows and can do? Well, it starts by watching and listening and seeing what they're doing, how they're engaging with the learning. And it takes a lot of attention to the details of what you're seeing. Then once you have a sense of it, my child is able to count to 5, or my child used the word heavy when he picked up the melon, or my child, for the first time, my child said tall when he built a tall building. Those kinds of ideas start resonating for you. You see them over and over and over, and then you can compare them to what the expectations are. You don't have to use what I shared earlier. It is the tool that a lot of educators are using, but you don't have to use that. You can use whatever you think works best for you. Another tool that I want to share with you that may be helpful is this one. This is called Act Early, Learn the Signs. And it has all sorts of great resources in it, but the milestones are the ones that I think are most useful for you in this context. And so it tells you what you should expect for your child in the different domains of development. And it includes videos so you can see what it looks like. So let's look at this one. And so you can start having an idea of what your child should be able to do at various stages of development. Let me put that in the chat for you, and you can use that. Oh, it's already in. Thank you, Marcy. I'm going to send them the one for the milestone specifically. Okay. And then you're going to want to talk to the professionals who work with your child so that you can get a sense of what they're seeing, and so that you can also share your own experiences and what you're seeing. These are folks that they're educated in the milestones, they're educated in child development. They know typical and atypical development and are very comfortable in talking with you about what that looks like and how you can support your own child's development and the kinds of things you might need from them as you support your child's development. So let's dig into what this looks like. And I want to encourage you to be an advocate as you talk with professionals. It's important to be prepared, to know what you want to say, and to know what you're trying to get out of the conversation so that you walk away feeling better and feeling empowered. So start by preparing what you want to share. You should provide context. I probably overshare, but being a teacher and knowing the different contexts of the children that I worked with, when I didn't have more information, it was harder for me to support the family. And so offering context so that people understand what your capacity is really important. For example, I am currently, oh, I see. Thank you. I am currently a single parent. I take care of 2 kids and my mother, and I have a full-time job, plus I consult. So my time is very, very full, and all of my children's teachers know that. So that if they're asking me to do something, they're going to ask me to do something that already fits into my very, very busy life. When I think it's really important that you share all of your children's strengths and really help them focus on a strength-based approach. Most teachers are trained to do that, and pediatricians and early interventionists and special educators. They're all trained to come to you with a strength-based approach. And so when you start by sharing a little bit about your life and your context, and then do a deep dive into what your child does really well and what you're very proud of, it really means something to them because it shows them that you know your child well and you're invested in their success. Then you want to start sharing some of your current concerns, and you want to give it to them in a way that provides context. For example, perhaps your child is struggling with the concept of less and more. For example, remember I told you about the different glasses filled with water that were all the same amount of water, but children are often fooled by that and they think that they're different amounts of water. So if you explain that you did that activity and it was the same amount of water, but they couldn't understand the concept, rather than just saying, my child doesn't understand more versus less, knowing that you did that activity with all those different glasses and different volumes, helps them understand where they are, where your child is conceptually, and helps them structure activities that will help them learn the concept that it's the same amount of water no matter what the shape of the glass is. I would tell as many stories as you can about your child's successes and challenges. Let them know what your child does well by telling a story. I showed you some pictures and told you stories about the kinds of math exploration that we did in our house. Offering that kind of structure and context allows educators not only to know what your child's good at and what your child's challenged by, but the way that you engage with that learning throughout your daily life. It allows them to see what you're trying and what's working and what's not working. And it allows them to sculpt some activities that are going to be more meaningful. Talk about what works for you and what doesn't work. So I think letting them know what you have access to, what your resources are, what your energy level is. You know, they may want you to go to the library and do activities at the library. They may want you to take your child to a museum or a playground that's far away, and you can't do that. It's just not in your capacity. Let them know that. Let them know what you can do too. There's a playground a block away from our house and we go there all the time. What can we do at the playground that's a block away from my house rather than the one that's a mile away and too hard to get to? Then ask questions so that you can gain insight and strategy. Have some questions ready to go so that you can find things that work discreetly for you. And make sure you ask for concrete support. Ask for things that you need, not things that don't let them give you things that you don't need. Often we want the teachers in our lives to be happy with us and think we're doing our best as parents, and we're worried about being judged by them. Don't worry about that. They are there to work for you. And so it's really important to give them all of the information you can give them so that they can do that successfully. Make your interaction with these professionals meaningful for your family. So listen to what they have to say, and then steer the conversation by offering context and information. You may want to repeat what you hear and then say, you know, we tried that in the grocery store and it didn't work because when we go to the grocery store, all they'd want to do is run around. And every time I try to put them in the cart, they climb out. So the grocery store is not working for us. Can you give us another idea that works in our community that we could really do? In that way, you're also pushing against ideas that don't fit into your life. Sometimes you may want to make suggestions about strategies that would work for you. You know, the grocery store is really hard and the restaurant is really hard because they have so much energy. But when I take them to the playground or to a children's play space, or we go to a friend's house where they have a lot of toys and things to play with, that works for us. What could we do in those settings? That's a great way to steer the conversation to ways that are meaningful to you. And remember that you're the expert on your child and your family. And so sharing that information is really important. I'm going to go back to the first bullet again, though. Listening and understanding what they're saying is also important because it helps you adapt their advice to things that work for you. For example, maybe they suggest that you get some fancy thing that they think will help you support math development. You can stop and say, I can't afford that, but I can afford the cans that I already have in my cabinet, the cereal boxes that are already in my pantry, and the plastic bowls and spoons that I have in my kitchen. How can I use those to do building, to do math in my house? And then when you're done talking to the professionals, make sure that you say thank you because they are coming from a place of good intention. They appreciate all of the thanks you offer. I remember working with families of children with significantly disabled kids, and they were always gracious when I would stop, listen to their lives, and offer tips that fit into their life. They were so incredibly appreciative, which made me as a professional want to work that much harder. As a parent, I have worked with a lot of professionals who don't do that. And I still am grateful because I know that they're trying their best. And we develop a relationship through my being appreciative when they're not hearing me, that they start hearing me. So always saying thank you and building that strong relationship allows them to feel invested in you, and therefore they'll listen better, they'll invest better. Let them know the best way and time to follow up because you want them to follow up. And they don't know how to do that unless you tell them. I'm a big text or email person simply because I'm exhausted by the end of the day and I don't want to be on the telephone. So I always say at the end of a meeting with a professional, you can email me and text me anytime. I will respond quickly. And then what I find is there is a lot of good follow-up that happens via email and text because I told them when they could do it and what form to use. I would encourage the idea of ongoing check-ins and support so that you're always getting feedback about what's going on in the classroom or what's going on in their childcare setting. That way you're always hearing about what kind of progress your child is making. And all of this together helps you build a strong and meaningful relationship that will support you as you need more resources. So they may have websites for you, they may have apps for you, they may know where you can get free or affordable equipment or toys that you can integrate into your home. But building that relationship and asking the right questions always helps you get that information.